Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Win ITS webinar that we will be hosting today. My name is Julia Nyberg, and I will just introduce the concept of the leaky pipeline and the project. And after that, I will leave the word to today's moderator. This project, the Win ITS project, is funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers and is the second of two projects with the same name. And both of these projects have focused on creating a network to promote gender equality within the ITS sector and also the mobility sector in the Nordics. This initiative involves EIT Urban Mobility, Trivector Traffic, and national ITS organizations from Finland, Estonia, Norway, and Iceland, as you can see on this picture. And in December 2023, representatives from the project's member organizations gathered for an in-person workshop to discuss shared challenges and opportunities for achieving a more gender equal transport sector and ITS sector. And one central theme during these 2 days that we spent in Copenhagen was the concept of the leaky pipeline, which I would say is a way to understand how norms and expectations impact women in the industry or in the sector. And the leaky pipeline, it will be the basis for this webinar, and I will be sharing more about the discussions we had around this topic. And then I will leave the word to our moderator. So the leaky pipeline is, as I said, a result of the discussions that we had in the project consortium, both especially during the first project, but also during the second project. So this is a way of thinking about how norms and expectations affect women in this sector. So I will start from the left side of this picture and try to get you through this leaky pipeline. At first, in the start of women's careers or at the beginning of this pipeline, women receive information about educational and career opportunities. And in the project team, we discussed this a lot, that how this career opportunities is presented and by whom, it all plays a significant role in how accessible these opportunities are perceived to be by women. And based on this information that you get in your early years, but also as well as prevailing norms, individuals make decisions about their career paths. And when you, as a young candidate, needs to go through a job application process, or in the mobility sector or the ITS sector, you need to search for the right job, but you also have to see yourself as relevant for the job. You have to apply and to be invited for an interview. And once you're in the room, the person or you yourself need to be, or you must be assessed based on your competence, not only by or merely by your gender. And this is something that the project team felt is not always the case, that sometimes you are seen as a woman or a man. When you come into this room, you're not only assessed by your competences. And later on in your career, when you're in a company, both women and men build their experience and track record based on the opportunities they themselves perceive as available, but also the opportunities that are offered to them, either directly or indirectly through managers or colleagues. And here we think that both norms and who historically have gotten a role as manager, for example, it affects who will get the manager positions or other strategic career opportunities in the future. And based on the opportunities available, we discussed that careers of women and men will begin to take place, but as the career progress, events in one's personal life may also have an impact. For example, you might have a desire to start a family and take parental leave for a period of time. And for the organizations that were in this project, the conditions vary across the countries represented. But a common view that we all had was that the parental leave can be a disadvantage for women. And there is a perceived risk that women are offered fewer opportunities by managers and colleagues around the time of starting a family, or around the time when someone else thinks that you will start a family, which in turn affects their future careers, but also in terms of what responsibilities you get, or leadership roles, or the salary development. We also discussed that these effects can be long-lasting and also contributing to the underrepresentation of women in senior positions when it comes to the mobility sector, including management, but also boards. And the lack of women in middle management and leadership roles also creates a shortage of mentorship opportunities, and it means that young women are less likely to see a female role model in leadership within the ITS sector, or the mobility sector, or the tech sector than their male peers. And this reinforces existing norms within companies across the sector. So this was what we discussed, and we think that the leaky pipeline serves a visual metaphor for how women at various stages along the way drop out or fall off this particular career path. So this is what this today's webinar will be about. But before I introduce our moderator, I will just give you some practical information. Please use the chat in Zoom to ask your questions, and we will try to answer them in the end of this webinar. And if you experience any technical issues with Zoom, my colleague Christian will help you, and you find his email in the left bottom corner of the slide. So please reach out to him if you have any issues. In the end of the webinar, we will also use Menti, the Mentimeter, to ask you some questions. So on the screen now, you can see the Menti code, but also a QR code. So please join us there, so you are ready when we ask the questions in the end. I will show this QR code and the Menti code later on as well. So no stress if you can't manage it right now. That's all the practical information. Now I will leave the word to our moderator for the day. I'm very happy to present Maria Fragranes Clemensen, manager at the Tech Nordic Advocates. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you so much, Julia. Hi, everyone. Super happy to be here. So before I'll start talking a bit about Tech Nordic Advocates and what we do, I will do a quick introduction to the amazing panelists we have with us here today. So first off, we have Signe Klintgaard Korać, who is the leading specialist in mobility at COWI, and she holds a Master of Science in Engineering with a specialization in urban and traffic planning. And she is especially passionate about the transition to sustainable mobility. Throughout her 70 years career as a manager in the mobility sector, Signe has come to realize the importance of initiatives that support gender equality, recognizing that they are essential for achieving higher ambitions and improving decision making. Then we have Hedda Heyerdahl with us, who is the founder of Bikeloop, and then she's also an experienced industrial designer and entrepreneur. From 1994 to 2010, she has worked as an industrial designer, running her own design company and developing a wide range of products, from water bottles for ferries to bus shelters and lighting fixtures. She has co-founded one of the first companies dedicated to developing and distributing EV chargers for the emerging electronic vehicle market, which was acquired by DIFA in 2017. In 2021, she founded Bikeloop, a company revolutionizing bike storage solutions by making bike rooms smarter, safer, and more profitable, with value-added services for cyclists as well. And then we are lucky to have Thomas Burøe with us here today, who has a PhD and is an assistant professor at DTU's Department of Engineering, Technology and Didactics. Thomas is a part of the Diversity in Technology Research Project funded by Carlsberg Foundation, exploring how the tech industry approaches social diversity. And his work focuses on activists and those driving sustainable and social change, an area where his insights have even earned recognition from punk legend Ian MacKaye of Minor Threat. And Thomas has also published in journals such as Organisation and Culture and Organisation, as well as in anthologies with Springer and Routledge. So we're in for a treat here today with brilliant speakers. So a lot to be excited for. Yes, let's see if it will allow me. Yes. So let's see, next off is Tech Nordic Advocates. So my name is Maria and I'm the Nordic Program Manager at Tech Nordic Advocates, which I'm gonna talk a bit about. I'm also a founder myself and have been working within the tech industry for the last 6 years. But today I have the honor of working with the entrepreneurs and innovators within the area. So who and what is Tech Nordic Advocates? We are Northern Europe's largest tech startup ecosystem and the Nordic sibling of Tech London Advocates, which is where it all started approximately 12 years ago. And since then, the ecosystem has expanded to 48 tech hubs all over the world, as you can see here on the map, with over 30,000 members globally. Also an ecosystem today known as Global Tech Advocates, or TTA. So as the Nordic arm of TTA, Tech Nordic Advocates has become a unique gateway to other Nordic and global markets for startups, with a lot of initiatives that I'm going to dive a bit more into. Let's see here. So we are also the largest women in tech network in the Nordics with over 1,200 members and are also the owner of We Promote Women. And then we have various strategic partnerships with, for instance, She-Vestments and Diversity Economics Institute. In 2023, we became the Nordic Baltic ambassador of UN-based Women's Entrepreneurship Day, which means that we are the host of this celebration event across the Nordics, next one being in November. Yes. So all in all, our mission is to accelerate startups, scale-ups, and partner growth, as well as international expansion, and have a clear vision to be the leading platform for tech startups and scale-ups growth across the Nordic Baltics. Yes. So the way we deliver on our mission is through services such as, of course, access to a huge network. We function as ecosystem connectors across the Nordics, Baltic, and globally. And then we support individual startups and scale-ups, support corporate startup partnerships, offer top-rated programs, where we also see a lot of university students participate in. We support fundraising, all services that are created to help startups scale international faster, and also especially looking into the diversity element. We have a pan-Nordic team with people based in Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And none of the work that we are doing today would have been possible without our amazing partners who support our programs and also our programs focusing on female founders. So that's partners such as COWI with us here today, London Stock Exchange, Magnus and Grant Thornton, to name a few. And then we also partner with universities across the Nordics. Some examples here are DCU and other universities. We work with the embassies as well as cities and the public sector, who all buy into the mission on bringing more female leaders and innovators forward. And then we offer Europe's only international female tech founder growth program for companies based in the Nordics. And a significant percentage of the startups on our diversity programs have actually engineering backgrounds. And a bit about the, let's see, it's reason, isn't it? So saying yes. So here is the problem and why we do it. One of the reasons why we're focusing on growth programs for female founders you are probably aware of some of the numbers, but an interesting fact is that Nordic countries rank below the OECD average when looking into how many women actually start their own companies. And Denmark was actually in bottom 3 before we launched our programs 3 years ago, which demonstrates a positive development. The same goes with funding. Last year, only 1.3% actually went to female-founded companies in Denmark. So our programs are kind of created to fix these issues that we see. So we have these 3 models. Model 1 being focusing on helping more female founders launch new or grow early stage tech companies. Model 2 is focusing on supporting them to scale internationally and expand their businesses. And Model 3 is all about getting more access to capital. Other projects we've been a part of in the past are, for instance, this one with Smarter Cities Now, which was a comprehensive Nordic and UK based partnership where we worked across cities to knowledge share and share smart solutions for urban innovation. And then together with Loop City, TNA carried out a series of projects with startups, such as selecting startups with mobility solutions, everything from traffic management solutions, mobility apps, introduction of new smart and sustainable vehicles, etc. And last but not least, we have 2 events coming up. The first one here is our 10-year anniversary. And then we actually also have a pitch competition for scale-ups that are ready to scale in the UK, which is going to be both in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. I can see here this is the Danish state, but we would love for any startup to apply to this pitch competition if you have UK expansion on your agenda. Thank you so much. And feel free to connect with me afterwards or send me any questions you have after this webinar if anything was of interest to you. Yes. So next up, I will invite Hedda to introduce yourself before we go on to the panel.
Hello, my name is Hedda Heyerdahl. I will tell a little bit about my journey so far. My journey into the male-dominated world began as an industrial designer back in actually 1995. That's a long time ago. I found myself in factories all around Europe. And as a woman, stepping into a heavily male-dominated production environment wasn't very easy. I quickly realized that the workers didn't expect me to know anything about the technical side of things. They asked me what color I wanted on the product, or not how it should function or how it should be produced. So I felt humiliating, and honestly, it pissed me off. So instead of backing down, I let that frustration fuel me a little bit. So I decided to dive deeper into the technical and functional development. And I wanted to prove that gender is not a barrier to competence. So in 2010, I co-founded Salto Ladestasjoner, one of the very first companies in Norway to develop and distribute electric vehicle charging systems, both hardware and software. And at that time, EV were just entering the market, and the infrastructure didn't exist yet. So we saw that opportunity and decided to build it from scratch. And it was a very male-dominated space. But by then, I had learned how to navigate it, and I was taken seriously, and I earned the respect from my team. But still, I learned a lot. It's a long way to go. So it was a challenging, rewarding, and sometimes intense journey. And in 2017, we sold the company. But I stayed there for 2 more years to ensure that smooth transition and help the finalize ongoing development. So then I turned my attention to the next big gap in sustainable mobility, and that was bicycle parking. So with the rise of e-bikes and more expensive bicycles, I saw the same problem emerging here, that the infrastructure wasn't really keeping up because cyclists lacked safe, reliable parking, and that was becoming a barrier to green mobility. So that's when I founded Bikeloop. Like with Salto, I wanted to build a full ecosystem, not just the hardware, not just an app, but an integrated, smart, sustainable parking system for bicycles. So after now, we have invested 3 million euros in development. We officially launched the full solution in October 2024. So our mission at Bikeloop is simple. It's to make cyclists' everyday life easier, smarter, and more convenient. And because when we remove friction from the cycling experience, when people feel safe parking their bikes, when it's easy to use, and when the infrastructure support them, then more people will choose bikes over cars. Just then. And that's a huge win for health, society, and the planet. So that's my mission here. And today I continue to build on what I've learned since the 1990s, and that's listen carefully, challenge assumptions, and never accept being underestimated. And if we want true gender balance in the mobility, in leadership, in innovation, in ownership, then we need more women, not just participating, but leading the change. So that's my appeal here. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you so much, Hedda, for this brilliant introduction. And Signe Klintgaard, welcome. Can you introduce yourself as well?
I can. I'm here. Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation for this webinar today. My name is Signe Klintgaard, and today I am leading specialist in mobility at COWI. I have been in the mobility sector for 25 years, meaning half of my life. So I've seen a bit. I've been manager for 17 years. And since December, being in COWI. I have worked 24 years in Nordjyllands Trafikselskab, which is the transport authority of northern Denmark, which has been a very ambitious company due to changes within transportation and coming to a mobility company today. I am a Master of Science in Engineering, and talking about genders, I think it all started in the university, that it was quite common that women were few back then. It was just a part of my everyday life. I didn't think that much about it back then. So going into professional work and the mobility sector didn't feel so different to begin with, and I didn't think as much about it as when I was young. Very quickly, I became a leader, a very highly value-driven leader, as I say, holistic in all matters and very ambitious. When I look at it and we're asked to join today, I really think that we do have a backlog if we want to equality between genders in the pipeline. And I mean, we need to act and help each other with this. So it makes great sense to be here today for me. Besides, I am a member of the Danish think tank, Mobility 2050. I think I'm a team player in all matters, and I think it's very important for us to know what are the leading star, what are we working for to help us work together and understand the travel we're at. And that's something we're working on and trying to figure out, how do we have to actually get this strategy going. And I really need that. We need that, I believe, to help us get in the right direction with the right mobility. I'm talking about not less waste of food, but less waste of transportation. Yes, that's all for me. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Signe. Also super excited to have you with us here today. Thank you. And next up, we have Thomas in the panel. Hi, Thomas. And can you say a bit about the what you were working on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. It's quite nice. Yeah, well, basically, I'm a researcher. I work at DTU, Technical University of Denmark. And I'm part of a research group that is studying basically how the Danish tech sector is grappling, tackling, or wrestling with the question of diversity. Diversity being a broad concept. To some, it means exclusively women. To others, it's a broader set of markers of identity. We don't have a specific opinion on what diversity means because we work principally on ethnographic grounds. So we are interested in how people think about these matters. And what we've been doing for a few years now is we've been conducting fieldwork in the sector. And we have been interviewing people who take up different positions in the field. And we have obviously also looked at the relevant literature. And what we found so far is that when it comes to the specific case of Denmark, and we all know the statistics, I think. The statistics are fairly horrible in terms of many parameters like leadership, funding, access, equality of opportunity, and so on and so forth. But some of what we found is obviously a willingness, at least in speech, to commit to having more diverse organizations. We see lots of initiatives. We see that kind of willingness. But at the same time, we also see a technical sector that is fairly reluctant to commit to any like really drastic changes in terms of how it organizes itself, how it organizes its processes. Also, when we talk about norms and prevailing culture, there's also a bit of a backlog there, stuff to work on. So we've definitely come across a whole set of barriers to obviously female participation in tech and engineering, but also in general barriers to diversity. And we've also seen what people try to do to change these things. So if you could just skip the slide to the next one, I can just briefly show you what we found so far in like very broad terms. We look at three major ways in which people try to do stuff about diversity, to increase diversity in tech. And we have one group of what we call tactics or devices, which is think carefully about how you organize yourself. It could be your startup, but it could also just be your existing organization. Think about discourse. Think about how you talk about diversity. Also think about how you argue for diversity. I mean, even why we should care about diversity. It's all present in how we speak. And finally, there's also something about how we relate and how we use relationships to foster more diversity. It's obviously formal and informal networks, but also support groups and more like we have a thing called Whisper Networks, which is one of my favorite devices I found so far. So there's a whole range of things that we have been observing people to be doing, which is really interesting. So what we're trying to wrap our heads around is try to figure out what's generally going on in the tech field. Are these initiatives in any way compelling as viable strategies to change the field towards more equality, more inclusive practices? Will we see a wider range of types of people there? So that basically leads on to the final question, which is, what do we even consider to be diverse? And to quote an old anthropologist, he said that we should think about differences that make a difference. So in our vocabulary, we would say that diversity are basically anything that is considered a difference that makes a difference. So it's usually something that you as an individual don't get to choose yourself. It's usually the people around you that decide if your difference makes a difference. And I think that's a kind of a segue into one of my main messages, which is I think what is most effective when it comes to fixing leaky pipelines, but also increasing diversity, is thinking very carefully about how we make difference matter. So how do we make our organized practices inclusive? How do we make them open to other people, and so on and so forth? That's about me, I guess.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for the introduction. Yes. So now we will go on to the panel discussion. Let's see. So if do you have your cameras on? And let's see if I think we will go to this mode. Yes, brilliant. I can see all of you. So to kick off the discussion, I would like to ask all of you in here, the whole panel, how would you describe the current state of gender balance in the mobility sector? Can you recognize the leaky pipeline that Julia just has described? You can just unmute yourself if you want to go first.
I'll go.
Yes, thank you, Signe.
Overall, I think I observe a significant presence of women in the mobility sector, as a matter of fact, today. And I find it logical in the sense that the industry demands, the sector demands skills that many women possesses. And here I think holistic thinking, because we're in a change mode, not only in a professional sense, but also in their ability to consider the bigger picture often, and their curiosity, as I see it, for individuals as whole persons. That's a typical woman skill, I think. However, as I see it in management corridors, particularly at the executive level and in boards, the gender balance is still heavily unbalanced, I think. My assertion is that these environments often do not see the imbalance as a problem or real weakness. I find it, of course, somehow regrettable, since greater diversity is essential for forming, for me, high-performing teams. And I've experienced the difference myself to gain, yes, ambitious goals and sound and good decision making. That's how I see it.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. And I think also a lot of studies actually show that innovation always performs better when it's a diverse teams in general, especially considering sustainability. So very important. Hedda, do you want to follow up with?
Well, I can just, I'm in the same sector, but I'm from the industrial side. So I also see the women are traditionally described as posters on the wall, in the factories. But I think the gender balance in the mobility sector is improving, and that I think that's also because of the change towards more software-based solutions, electric mobility solutions, and new sort of incentives towards more human-friendly cities, and they are acting to also they are sort of speaking to more the feminine side of the mobility sector. So I think that's very good, and we should focus more towards that, perhaps. And I think one of the main issues here is also that how you describe also traditionally market this type of industry is very male dominated marketing way of market. So that's also a thing we could to think about, I think.
Good point, Hedda. Thomas?
Yeah, I can say something about the state of, I guess, tech entrepreneurship in general, because I don't know specific things about the mobility sector as such. And I do recognize within the tech sector in general, both the phenomenon of the leaky pipeline, it's definitely a thing. But I can also recognize a growing number of females participating in the field. And I think the main issue in some sense is the question of how social and cultural reproduction takes place in the field, which is obviously something that happens over the years. And so one thing is the phenomenon of social and cultural reproduction, reproducing the norms, reproducing the representations, the images of who is seen as legitimate, as a legitimate member of the field. But then there's the other side, which is also how justifications for inequality appears, how they are put into speech, sort of how you argue for inequality. And I think part of that is obviously things that we've heard many times, like everything from stereotypes of what men and women are good at, and the other sector you have like the other end of the spectrum, you would have like ideas about meritocracy, which is also really interesting, because I think there is something to be said about the relationship between the idea of meritocracy and the idea of equality, or what we could call justice, basically. So I definitely have a reservation about the principal argument for diversity, which is that it's good for business, or that it's good for innovation. I think the argument, in a sense, well, it makes sense from a certain perspective, but it's also a very dangerous argument, because as soon as the tides turn and maybe you even sort of lose the legitimacy from the studies that show that innovation performs better with diverse teams, when that sort of fizzles out, all of a sudden you lose the ability to appeal to the idea that it's about equality in principle. So I definitely think there's something to be said about why we argue for diversity, and the types of instrumental strategic arguments we use in public debate or internally in organizations, and wherever we speak for diversity. I think we should be very careful to think about whether we use the instrumental argument for diversity or whether we use the justice argument. And Denmark, in that sense, and I'll wrap that up with this, Denmark is really interesting, because Denmark, for the last, I guess, 30 years or so, have been working on the assumption that we have acquired gender equality. So, and what's the fuss about, right? We have formal equality. Obviously, it's not true, but it's a very specific kind of ideology, which means that it opens the door to like strict meritocracy. Then all of a sudden, what should count and what counts are your merits. So that's an interesting situation, that Denmark is such a country marked by that specific idea that we have reached equality by now.
That's very true. A lot of people are surprised when they see the numbers based on what they think is the case. So I'll ask a question to you, Signe. You built a successful long career in the corporate mobility sector. So what do you believe are the key factors that contributed to you succeeding in climbing some, as some people might say, the corporate ladder in the mobility sector?
Well, for me, I think the case was the combination of my professional skills in combination with my personal skills at the moment. I was educated within the field, specialized within public transport. So that meant, although I was coming right from the university, that I was skilled. And so I had, you can say, established my expertise, and in combination with my personality, that I was kind of unafraid to demonstrate leadership from the beginning. I was curious about the task at hand, and I engaged deeply with the people around me. Naturally, I was willing to take a responsibility greater than my job description, I think. Because it really interested me, and I would wanting to get to know everyone. And this approach back then, when I look back, and it's followed me ever since, and I experience it now today at COWI, that approach allowed us to connect various disciplines and individuals, which ultimately led us to better results and leads us to better results. And I love that way of working, and I was and I am proud that we really had some results that were valued, we were proud of, and really valued by others. And that has been the pathway for me, the advancement in the corporate world, 4 steps, each with increased responsibility in one way or another. If that makes sense.
It does. So in your roles, have you seen any strategic initiatives that you perceive as being especially good in retaining or attracting women in mobility as a leader yourself in the industry?
What I found very important is to treat people equally and be curious. And not also to juniors, not only seniors, with respect, be curious, because in that sense, women, it will be easy. We need to let people in, the women in. So we need to believe, trust, and be curious. And in that sense, I've experienced that women has come and has gained and been interested in responsibility, because I've given that to them, if you understand, trusted them, and so they climb the ladder much faster, instead of holding them back. Oh, you have to stay put for 5 years before you can have an opinion about anything. No, I don't think that's not the matter. That's how I see it.
Good point. Thank you for sharing that, Signe. And Hedda, I'll ask a direct questions to you. So you of course open up to it a bit in your introduction, but have you experienced any challenges as a female entrepreneur within this industry? And if so, can you maybe give an example or two, or what you feel is relevant?
Yes, I have a lot. I've experienced a lot of challenges actually, but the one core challenge is that when you come into a room as a woman in that field, mobility field, you will meet skepsis, or and upfront being probably underestimated. So when you meet relations for the first time, they will sort of test you, So you have to know, my opinion is that you have to know twice as much as a male when you come into a room as a woman. You have to deliver your knowledge and be the best in the field, because they will test you and see what you are, what your skills are. And if you deliver your skills up front, you will get a lot of questions. And you will come so far that you can answer them, and you impress them. You will be respected as a part of their sort of team or whatever it is. So that's my experience. That and I think that's I take that as a challenge every time. You know, I see that so often. So that's very interesting.
And it resonates with a lot of stories I hear in general from female founders. So considering this, is there anything on in your mind that you think is needed to help more women diving into this journey of launching and building their own company within mobility? What do you think is necessary in order to attract at least make more women inspired to go on this direction?
I think if you're a woman founder, you are a strong woman, first of all. You know, and a strong woman knows that to be a leader or front runner in a male-dominated mobility sector, you need a team that supports you, and you. So I think you need to build relations, other leaders that are male, especially men, males, and I think you should need to prove your knowledge through winning competitions, for example, that you can show that others believe in you, and to be an expert in your field, done your homework, be interested and curious about what you're going to deal with. And need to be interested in business. I think that's very important skill to have. And yeah, so you have to be the smart person in the room.
Thank you so much, Hedda.
And one other thing, Maria, is that we have to lift each other and support each other as women, because there is more stormy weather days for a woman than a man, I think, out there.
I agree on that. Very good point, Hedda. Thank you for raising that as well. And I see that people in the chat are very much agreeing with what you're saying. So, Thomas, on to you. Do you see any specific structural or educational barriers that prevent more women from pursuing careers in, for instance, mobility and transport? Of course, you have been looking into tech in general, but we see that it's the exact same with this industry, right? So are there any like structural barriers you see?
Oh, there's a lot. Obviously, one of the most predominant one is the reproduction of images, like the reproduction of who you consider to be like legitimate members. That's a low-hanging fruit to just start by looking at representation in general. There's a wonderful study of Dana Scully, if you know her. She's the X-Files scientist, and a group of women, it's a controlled study that showed that a large group of women who started studying STEM educations could refer to having watched Dana Scully in action in the X-Files. And part of the argument is obviously that this represented viability. It represented that, of course, I can do this as well. That's not necessarily the same as pointing to role models. It's also just a question of representation. So that's one, representation. The second one is what counts as a CV providing activity. So within organizations, what do you value? And in educational tracks, what do you value? What's considered important? Already at that point, we can start seeing the sort of the beginning of the scissor diagram, right? So what counts as valuable? That's a barrier as well. If you don't reflect critically upon what you value, you often end up just valuing what seems to be the dominant values, and often they coincide with like male, masculine priorities, because the field has traditionally been male dominated. So obviously social reproduction going on. So that's the second one. A third barrier is it's a bit more difficult to tackle with, but that's sort of the inbuilt sexism of the field, discriminatory practices, rumors, people's experiences. I mean, also like racist and other kinds of discriminatory practices that are just part of any field. So if you don't tackle those problems, obviously people are going to pick it up somehow and know that, well, obviously this is not a place where I want to go because I know it's a sexist place. So, and sexism takes many forms, right? So, so that's a third one. It's difficult to deal with if it's informal sexism. If it's formal sexism, obviously it's something else. You can deal with that through law. You can deal with it in other ways, but informal ones are much more difficult. But it's part of what sort of sticks to a sector. And we can definitely see that that's part of the technology entrepreneurship sector, that it's part of the brand that it's sexist. So that's 3 pointers in terms of barriers.
Thank you for sharing those. And yeah, that leads me on to the next in terms of what strategies could universities, for instance, focus on, or academia in general. I also saw in the chat that some participant also highlighted how important it is already in, the early on high school, middle school, etc. So which strategies could we focus on to change the perceptions and make, for instance, in this case, mobility careers more attractive for young women, do you think?
Me? Yeah, I think there's a few good examples of how, for instance, university organizations or just higher education have tackled the issue of access. For instance, if you have aesthetic educations like film school, conservatories, these places, they typically have a test you have to take before you can be admitted. So if you sit down and critically reflect upon what these tests actually test, then you typically find out that they do not just test skill. They also test for instance, gender. They test for other things. So that's a place where you can start working with education. You simply have to figure out what is it we value with these educational programs that we're running. How do we make people come to our educations? How do we provide access? Who do we select as participants? By what means? But also, who do we deselect? Who do we tell you're not really welcome here? It's not really for you. So, I mean, speaking personally, and that's not about gender, but that's about class background. For me, it was definitely an issue coming from a lower working class, middle class background. Sort of getting to university was a big thing. I didn't even know what was going on in university. So that's just an example of how an educational institution is unable to communicate to certain parts of the demography that it's not for you. It's only for a select group. So examine how you attract people, examine your mechanisms for filtering people, examine your mechanisms for selecting and deselecting. That will be at least the educational sector in terms of how it can break the reproduction of these things. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. And Signe, you of course have been studying within this field. So can you maybe put a few words on what maybe attracted you, or what to this particular field, or what do you think was maybe good or bad in that experience?
Well, that was very basic to one point, that I was good at math. I loved math. I remember many women are good at that, and so I entered and saw the ambition. And then my background is maybe not the same like Thomas said, but there were great expectations what to achieve and reach higher. So that was the push from my home. And I think, of course, that made a difference too, to enter a university and believing that, of course, become a scientist is obvious. And then it was so nice to meet there, to find other young women with the same ambition, that of course we can do it. So you kind of thought, oh, it's not just me thinking that I actually can. There are others, and that we had that we were talking about it too, because we did talk about it, not out loud back then. That has changed. I can see that, and then supporting each other, because some groups are better at fake it till you make it. That was not my way of doing things back then. And I didn't know back then that showing weakness is actually a great strength. Just be yourself.
Yes, a very predominant value today, or it's increasingly becoming a great force. So time is about to run out, but I want to wrap up the panel by asking you one last question for all of you, and let's see if you can answer it shortly, but it's a very important question, I think, because one thing is about the challenges, but most importantly is definitely what can we actually do about it. So if you could implement one change tomorrow to improve gender equality in mobility, what would it be? Hedda, do you have anything?
Well, for long-lasting impact, I think we need to front success stories like Signe, and front them to inspire women to go the same way.
Great point. Thank you for sharing that. Signe?
You are asking only one change, right?
Yes. If you have two, you can probably squeeze it in.
No, if I am to choose only one, I'm not in any doubt. It would be definitely that the top management layer recognizes the importance of gender balance. Not out of obligation, but from an understanding of the positive difference it actually brings. The shift would initiate what I refer to as the chocolate waterfall, providing benefits to everyone at all levels. But the thing is, of course, I know achieving this will not that will require several steps, because we're not there. So to begin with, I think that corporate should have an effective strategy to identify underlying issues and set ambitious goals to get there, like COWI. I'm proud of that.
Yes, that's so good. Thank you so much, Signe, for sharing that. And Thomas?
Well, it's a difficult one, but I would say that I would actually go for a rather soft one, or apparently soft one. I would say that what needs to happen is probably a general overhaul of organizational culture in general. It would be examining the kinds of social and cultural spaces that organizations create and provide. And the reason why I'm pointing to culture is that it's one of the hardest things to change, but it's also one of the things that makes the most difference in terms of creating spaces that are welcoming and open and inclusive and values the right things instead of valuing things that are not the right things. So that would be my pointer, but it's difficult. It takes a lot of effort to make those kinds of inquiries into your own organizational culture.
Great point. And yeah, difficult, but important. So thank you for mentioning that, Thomas, as well. I see a lot of comments here that are very agreeing with everything that has been said. And let's see, yeah, we have Julia, we have a Mentimeter. So thank you so much, all you three. It was a pleasure hearing your points on these topics. So I definitely feel inspired from this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, you three.
you,
Thank you.
everyone, and thank you, Maria, for moderating in an excellent way. I see that the time just turned 3, so if you have to leave, it's totally fine. But if you have 1 minute over, please join us in our Mentimeter. You can see the code and the QR code on the screen. We would love to see both where are you joining from first, and we already have 5 answers. Very nice to see. And even more, we have, it's a bit hard to see exactly where you are in the Nordics, but I think it's Sweden and Denmark, maybe also Norway, and we have Iceland represented as well. Very good to see. And I will, you can still answer this one, but I will give you the next question as well, since you can write a sentence here or 2 if you want to. So what is the most important takeaway from today's webinar? And as for Signe, you can choose 2 if you want. It's not only 1. So please write your answers in the Mentimeter. I hope some of you are still there. I can't see them. We have still people here. I can see it. Please write what you will bring to your organization tomorrow. What will you remember from this webinar? This is an important topic. I totally agree with you. It's a very important topic that should be highlighted in every part of the organization and society as well. Ambitious goals and stay in the course. Reach out to male leaders. Very important too, I think. And we also got some comments in the chat that the thing about gender inequality doesn't start at the university level, and we agree it starts even earlier. And of course, the societal norms also affects your choices. I think that you all are writing, and I think that I would just stop. There's more. Be available as a mentor for younger female ambitious leaders. I think that's really important. I would love to have a female leader as a mentor. So please reach out. Perfect, everyone. I will just skip this slide, but write your comments in the Menti, will be open. And with that said, we would just like to thank you all to the panel, Hedda, Signe, Thomas, and also to Maria for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you to the audience, all of your questions and also your comments. We wish you a lovely Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you
Thank
for
you. Bye.
today. Bye.